As we bring this difficult week to a close, this modern midrash from Rabbi Tali Adler, a contemporary from the Hadar Institute in New York, rings poignant. They say that the moment that finally pierced the heavens when the Jews were in Egypt was the moment a mother was forced to give birth as she worked in the cement mixing vats, and her baby was ensconced in the mortar. They say the angel Gabriel took the baby, embedded in cement, and laid him before God's throne. They say God kept him there, and that when Moses and the elders ascended to heaven, they saw him there, still cherished. To me, this image, saddening as it is an expression of one of our deepest Jewish values, that above all, we protect and preserve life. Life is precious to us. Life remains sacred even in death, as our hearts are pierced amidst the news of the return to Israel of the bodies of Oded Lifshitz and Kfir and Ariel Bibas of blessed memory. So tonight we start from the premise that we, as Jews, sanctify life, full stop. We start by turning to our Talmud, where it teaches us of pikuach nefesh, the preservation of a soul. It's worth noting that Oded Lifshitz, zichrono livracha, literally dedicated himself to this mitzvah, volunteering his time as a peace activist with Road to Recovery, an organization that transports ill Palestinian children to hospitals in Israel for medical treatment. He drove sick children from Gaza into Israel that they may have a chance at life, a chance at a better life. As we sit and pray here on Shabbat, it is an injunction seen as so deeply important to us that we learn pikuach nefesh doche et haShabbat. The preservation of a soul overrides the keeping of the Shabbat. Put differently, when there is a conflict, we give ourselves permission to prioritize one set of mitzvot over another. In this instance, we place no doubt in our minds that when another soul is in danger, we do everything we can to keep them safe, despite violating another set of mitzvot, those of Shabbat. I'll admit that this mitzvah has crossed my mind in recent weeks as we have seen the slow but steady release of living hostages, notably on Shabbat. Please God, following this week from hell, tomorrow morning we will have good news with 6 more living hostages slated for release. As Jews, we sanctify life, which is why we have clung to hope and faith for the past year and a half or so. We may have expected the terrible news, but we certainly hoped for the best. On the holiest day of our Jewish calendar, Yom Kippur, we chant the famous words from the book of Deuteronomy, Uvacharta b'chayim, to choose in life. We so desperately wanted to believe that Oded would return home to his grandchildren and great-grandchildren to play his piano, that Ariel would dress up like Batman, that Kfir would take his first steps. In other words, we wanted to choose the path of optimism, despite all the evidence and all the gut feeling to the contrary. When it comes to the Bibas family, this clinging to life is highlighted in a Times of Israel article from this past Wednesday, sent to me by Rabbi K. I'll give him that credit. It reminds us of how obsessively we've followed their fates since they were not released in the November 2023 truce, as would have been expected, and then with videos a year later purporting to show Shiri and the boys being transported around Gaza on the day of their abduction. We therefore knew that they had been taken into Gaza alive. And for us as Jews, when there is life, there is hope. This hope turned to dread as the current hostage ceasefire deal continued, and Ariel, Kfir, and Shiri have been nowhere to be seen. This fear was compounded when Israel did not demand to know their whereabouts or have them freed, even when they fought successfully for other hostage women, namely Arbel Yehud. Nonetheless, there always was a sliver of hope, with some thinking that they had been transferred to another terrorist group and perhaps simply off the grid. One way or another, without anything official from trusted authorities, the wider Bibas family, in their turmoil, refused to grieve prematurely, even as the rest of Israel and arguably the Jewish people awaited a confirmation both predictable and shattering, to quote the article. Until it was done, it was not done, and according to the news right before services, we know that it still isn't over. This divinely ordained clinging to life and to hope, this roller coaster of optimism and emotion, makes it hurt all the more so when none of this turned out how we would have wanted or wished, or frankly, how it should have. As Jews, we sanctify life. Therefore, as hard as it might be, we do our best not to give in to the anger and despair we might be feeling in our sorrow. I'll be blunt once more. It feels ironic that our Torah portion this week, Mishpatim, contains, as a colleague pointed out, the prohibitions against kidnapping, against tunneling into someone's home to steal, and to not bring death unto the innocent. Of course, this feels like a slap in the face, or like adding insult to injury, considering that we know the circumstances and we know the experiences that turned Oded, Kfir, and Ariel and Shiri into household names since October 7. However, we can also interpret these laws as our reminder that we have known and we have witnessed the very worst of humanity. And thus we are commanded to say, we will not stoop to that level. That is not who we are. Emphatically, not us. We can take our lead from the Bibas family themselves, who have implored that their supporters, their carers, not seek out or call for revenge, but instead remember that there are approximately 70 other hostages who need to come home too. And of course, they and we are still awaiting all sorts of news about their beloved Shiri. That their lives or deaths are holier than our human instincts. As Jews, we sanctify life, which is why it was so vital to bring their bodies back in the first place, even amidst uncertainty and even after 500 days. The other side of the coin of life, we might presume, is death. This is why it was so crucial to us that we now live up to the Jewish value of kavod hamet, of honoring the deceased. This idea is rooted in our belief that the hostages deserve to be home and given a dignified burial in accordance with Jewish tradition and surrounded by the loved ones who must now face the impossible and embark on the impossibly long road to healing, some sort of healing. As Jews, we sanctify life. And as such, we will respect the manner in which the Bibas and Lifshitz families wish to speak about the precious lives of their precious loved ones. We will take our cues from them, refraining from spreading rumors or misinformation, also prohibited by Parashat Mishpatim. We will wait to share news and updates only until they, the families, are ready, and to use the language that they are using. For example, some of you may have seen some social media posts referring to these slain hostages as fallen, rather than other options we could use, like taken or murdered. Regardless of our own thoughts or feelings, let's follow their lead. It is the number one principle of another aspect of our Jewish sanctification of life, that of nichum avelim, comforting the mourner. On a final note, I will point out that our mourner's Kaddish does not mention death at all. Higadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, exalted and sanctified is God's holy name. Instead of focusing on death, our prayers instead focus on affirming life and sanctifying the source of life. So this Shabbat, in our heartbreak, when it feels like there's nothing left to say and no more tears to cry, we can instead do. We can instead act. Act in a way that fulfills our sacred obligation to sanctify life, and even more so in a way that sanctifies Jewish life. Be with community at synagogue, donate to a Jewish organization that promotes peace in Israel, perhaps in Oded's memory, or to any other Jewish cause you wish. Play music, go on a nature walk, read a Jewish book, call your best friend, do an act of kindness for your neighbor, whatever it is that sustains you and brings you life. Let us always remember that we say, Am Yisrael Chai. We are the people of Israel who live in every sense of the word. And maybe hug the little ones in your life just a little tighter tonight. Cherish them. Shabbat Shalom.